This is Nithar Ramachandra from the NR Media, NR Hour Sports Show, back with another episode. Happy Monday. I hope everyone had a great weekend. We are joined by a special guest, but before I introduce the special guest, we are live on iHeartRadio, Spotify, on all the podcast platforms, and everybody knows about the Spreaker app, where our fans can join in, ask questions, tune in into the Spreaker app on my phone, and you can put in the questions for today's show. But without further ado, I have Zac Houston. He's a former Yankees farmhand pitcher. He actually got some opportunities with different teams throughout his career in the minor leagues and spring trainings. But unfortunately, due to an injury, he retired, and he had a arm injury, which we'll get to in the process of it. And he's doing some big things right now off the field, which we'll also get to. I want to talk about his journey, how he got into baseball and all, and how he got started into baseball. And also the fans, thank you for joining, and please listen into this episode. But Zac, I just want to say thank you for joining the show. I know we interacted before in person, actually in Scranton, if I believe it was Scranton. But thank you for joining. How are you and your family doing?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
yeah, family's healthy, family's doing great, and just being back home. So it feels good, but it's different at the same time being home for this amount of time.
Yeah, so before we get to your journey how do you got into baseball, tell our fans what was it like seeing obviously the Yankees didn't win the World Series, but what was it like seeing your former like farmhand team, the major league team, going all the way to the World Series, playing the Dodgers, and seeing Volpe and Wells in the World Series, especially.
Yeah, that was cool, man. I remember I think it was the game that they won. So it would have been game four when Austin and Bolt both hit homers. I actually texted Austin after the game and congratulated him and everything. And it was really cool to see those guys being up there doing their thing. And of course, I was pulling for them because I mean those were my guys. So it was really cool to see those guys up there doing their thing. And I hate it didn't go their way.
Mhm. Yeah, so talk about what was it like going through the minor leagues with them, and obviously seeing their growth in the minor leagues. So what was that like just to be close to them, be part of their journeys?
Me and Austin were really close, and 2 years ago.
Mhm.
That's whenever I was there, and so he was my catcher, and we roomed together on the road, and we got really close. We kind of like the same things, and uh, he's a really awesome guy, and I've always kind of tried to stay really close with my catchers because at the end of the day, those are the guys who take care of you, and you should do the same for them. So me and Austin were really close, and um, they've got a really good farm system there though. I mean their track record shows. I mean they got really good players and they know what they're doing. So I mean it's no surprise that they were in the World Series, and I don't imagine it's going to take them very long to get back in the same exact position that they were just in.
Yeah, so talk about now. Let's transition into your career. How did you get started in playing baseball, and when did you start playing baseball in your career?
Um, I think I kind of started pretty similar to a lot of people. Started at a young age, played t-ball, played little league, did all the stuff growing up because that's what your friends did. I loved it. I mean, even whenever I was really, really young, I mean, it was it was just something that I really, really enjoyed doing. It never felt like a chore, or it never felt like I didn't want to go and play. It was quite the opposite. It was something that I just loved to do. And started to really kind of get into it. I guess probably around 13. Um, Started to play on a few little travel ball teams, and I kept progressing and getting better, and then whenever I got into school ball and I started playing in middle school and then in high school, I hit my growth spurt and kind of excelled a little bit more and more and more, and to the point where I got the opportunity to go to some really cool showcases, and um, got invited to try out for a few select teams, and then um, got to a point where I was fortunate enough to start talking to some pretty big Division I schools, and some professional teams started calling the house. Ultimately, I ended up going to Mississippi State. Had some of the best 3 years of my entire life when it come to baseball. It was an incredible program ran by an unbelievable coaching staff and some of the greatest teammates I've ever had the pleasure of playing with. It's different when you play in college opposed to professional baseball because most of the time in professional baseball you play with these guys for 1, maybe 2 years,
Mhm.
and then a lot of separation happens. Guys get traded. The guys who I came in with my freshman year in college, I played with those guys all 3 years. Those are the same guys that I came in with. So you develop these relationships. I actually just got back from my catcher in college. I just got back this past weekend. I went to his wedding in Cleveland. So
Wow.
it's relationships that you develop, and it was an incredible experience. I mean, it was a lot of fun. I know a lot of people, anybody who goes and plays there always talks about, playing at Mississippi State and being able to be surrounded by that many college fans. So it was a very different experience, especially going from the small town that I'm in and getting to go to Starkville, which not necessarily is a big town, but they do love their baseball there.
Yeah, Sidell, actually, speaking of Sidell, LA, talk about which team do you watch growing up being from LA?
I'm not from LA. I'm from Mississippi.
I mean, Mississippi, yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, it was funny. So my best friend and I growing up, we never really had a team. The closest team to us was the Braves in Atlanta. I liked watching baseball, but the Cubs used to have an old catcher, and his name was Michael Barrett.
Mhm.
And coincidentally, that happened to be my best friend's dad's name.
Oh,
And so we just kind of, at a really young age, we just always liked watching the Cubs because it was just fun for us to kind of imagine that his dad was the catcher for the Cubs. And it was easy because back then, being a Cubs fan, we didn't have to worry about, paying attention to the postseason because their season, their season ended, you know, every year at the same time.
yeah, I don't know why I said LA. Sorry, my bad, Mississippi. Um, but so we already have a fan question for you on my app on the phone, and one of our fans wants to know they wanted to get your thoughts on the chicken parm thing when they had it when Wells and Volpe was in Somerset, and talk about that chicken parm thing.
So that was actually the year before that I came over to the Yankees. I mean, I heard a little bit about it. I think it had something to do with Volp's mom made chicken parm and had Austin over, and Volpe was going through kind of a slump, and they went over there and they ate chicken parm, and Austin just talked him through his swing. And then I think the next day he went out and hit a homer or went crazy, went like 3 for 4 or something. I don't exactly remember, but I think that was the gist of it.
Hmm. Yeah, so tell our fans, did you get to play any other positions before choosing being a pitcher, and who in your career would you say that meant the most in your career, like coach wise from high school and college?
Yeah, I mean, I played first and hit and everything, but I was just always a better pitcher than I was a hitter. Unless you ask my dad, then he would tell you that I should have, yeah, kept hitting, but that's every parent. Um, I guess I mean, man, honestly, I've had so many very important people in my life in a coach's aspect. Um, my first college pitching coach, Butch Thompson, he was kind of a guy who he was soft spoken. He's the head coach at Auburn now. He was soft spoken. He was such a passionate coach. He loved his pitching staff, and he wasn't so much as just yelling and rah-rah in your face. And I'm not saying that that's wrong because I've had those coaches too. But it's just he kind of instilled a certain professionalism in his younger players that you kind of had certain ramifications and not I don't want to say a certain mold you had to fit because every player is different and there's not a right or wrong way. But he was pretty important to me because, like I said, aside from high school coaches and travel ball coaches, he was kind of the first one that kind of really taught me something outside of just like how to pitch or how to do anything. It was more the mental side of it. And then he left after my sophomore year, and we got Wes Johnson in, and I actually, I guess, followed the same guidelines a little bit more with Wes because he was more of that high intensity guy, and that's how I was. I like to be very intense whenever I play, and he just amplified it. And I mean, he's done unbelievable things. I mean, he went pitching coach at Mississippi State, and then before us, he was the pitching coach at Dallas Baptist, and then he was the pitching coach at Arkansas, and then he got the pitching coaching job for Minnesota in the big leagues for a few years. Then he went to LSU as a pitching coach, won a national championship. And now he's a head coach at Georgia. I mean, his resume is unbelievable. He has done so many amazing things, and I still talk to him. I actually got to see him whenever he was at LSU a year or two ago. Whenever I was training, I would go there a little bit, but he was a very very important coach for me. I kind of a lot of the things that he taught me in college, I carried into pro ball and still carry to this day. I mean, it's not just you know between the lines. It's just kind of it's a certain way that you want to carry yourself and it kind of circles back to the just being a professional and taking care of yourself.
Yeah, so for you, being from Mississippi, and how special was it for you to stay close to home, go to Mississippi State for college, and talk about that your college career at Mississippi State and being close and having your family, friends come to your home games a lot.
It was awesome. It was that kind of perfect distance to where I was 4 hours away. So if I had to come home, I could, but if I didn't feel like coming home, I had a pretty good excuse. Um, but no, it was amazing. I mean, my parents are my biggest supporters than they have been my entire life, and so they very very rarely missed a game. I mean, regardless if I pitched or didn't pitch, they were always there. So it was pretty amazing, and a lot of my friends were able to come up and watch me play because I was so close, and they didn't have to jump on a plane to come and watch me play. So it was incredible. And then even the people who aren't your family, when you're up there, it doesn't feel like you don't have a family because that entire town and that entire school is very close knit, and there's a I feel like I'm trying to sell people and going to college there, but I promise I'm really not. but but no, I mean it really is. It's an incredible place, and you know um I'm a little embarrassed that I haven't been back in a couple of years, but you just get busy with stuff. But it is an amazing school, and I was very 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 fortunate and very blessed to go there and play for 3 years.
Hey, the sports are amazing there. They have a good football team there. Their baseball team is good, and basketball. Every sport they compete on a high level in Mississippi State. And speaking of that, we have another fan question for you. They want to know some of your best moments in college.
Um, I guess the first one. I didn't play a ton my freshman year. I was young, and the team the year before had just came back from Omaha. They got beat out by UCLA to win the national championship. So that team coming back in 2014 was still a very, very good team. So to be able to play as a freshman was very difficult to do. And I was not one of the lucky ones that were able to do it. I think my sophomore year, my sophomore year, I um, pitched against LSU at home, and that was I think that was the first time that I actually felt like I was contributing to the team. I think I threw like 4 innings or something like that, maybe 4 or 5 innings out of the bullpen. And I just remember my whole family was there and pitched really well. And because it was LSU and they were such a big deal, I got all these text messages and calls and from family and friends. And it was the first time in college where I was like, wow, I can do this. I can compete at this level. And then my junior year, I had some really good games. We played in the SEC tournament, and I pitched 8 2/3 against Alabama, almost threw a complete game shutout against them. And then I remember I'll never forget this moment, but we were the number one team in the country. We were hosting a regional, and I was starting the game against Louisiana Tech, and it was me and my pitching coach and my catcher, and we were walking from the bullpen to the dugout
Mhm.
before the game started. And I just remember walking out onto the field down the warning track, and I just remember the entire stadium stood up, all 15,000, and just started screaming and cheering. And I just remember looking down at my pitching coach, very short guy. I remember looking down and he just looked up at me. He was like, "This is pretty cool." And I was like, "Yeah, this is pretty amazing."
Wow. Um, yeah, so fast forwarding from your college career, you talk about your draft experience. In 2016, you got drafted by Detroit Tigers, round 11. It was pick 325 overall. So talk about that, going to Detroit and being with your family and friends. And where were you guys that day during draft day? And then once you got that call from Detroit, how did you feel?
Yeah, I mean, so I think this is kind of the same with a lot of people. The draft never goes how you think. I didn't think that I was going to fall to the 11th round. I thought I was going to get drafted higher. I think a lot of, younger guys feel that way. And so when I didn't, it was kind of disheartening. And then when that next day rolled around, because they only do 10 rounds, and then after that 10th round, that stops it for that day. And then they picked it up on the following day. And so after that day was over with and they did rounds 1 through 10, I was like, man, like, what did I do wrong? Like, I thought I was throwing really well this year. Um, and then I had just my family had came into town. We were in Starkville. My family had came into town, and I remember the next morning, Detroit called, and it was really really early. I don't know. I think they had maybe had like the third or fourth pick that round, and they called, and I just remember I called my pitching coach Wes Johnson and told him, and he told me to take it. He said take it. He was like, you'll regret it if you don't. And I did. I called my called him back and told him thank you so much. And my mom and my dad and my uncle were all there, and it was a really really cool experience. I mean, I know a lot of people don't ever get to experience that call, but I was very one of the very lucky ones to be able to experience it. Not only experience it, but experience it with, really, really close family of mine.
Mhm. Yeah, and speaking of, so we have another fan question for you here on the on my app. One of our fans wants to know who are some of the pitchers that you looked up to growing up.
Um, Quite a few. I think probably the biggest inspiration I had was Randy Johnson. I didn't even pitch from the left side, but I loved the way that when people got in the box against Randy Johnson, like it was a completely different atmosphere whenever he was on the mound. I actually have one of his jerseys signed in my office,
Wow.
but he was just he was incredible, man. He was so. he was so intimidating, and I always wanted to instill that kind of fear in a hitter. I don't know if I ever did. I like to think maybe once or twice, but he was he was he was a big inspiration for me for sure. Along with multiple guys. I mean, Roger Clemens was incredible to watch. I was I loved the big guys who threw hard because that's what I tried to do.
Mhm. And like, do you have any like, do you have any like moments or memories of watching Randy Johnson, like games that you enjoyed watching him pitch?
Exact moments, no. I mean, I can vividly remember him just on the mound pitching, striking whoever out, and
Yeah.
then just walking off the mound like he owned the entire building.
Yeah, so to tell our fans, what did you learn throughout your career? And obviously, you got some opportunities from team to team and being with the Tigers first. But just talk about what did you learn throughout the minor leagues as a pitcher, and especially being with the Yankees, also getting some time with the Yankees organization.
Well, I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about I picked up quite a few things as far as like knowing how to pitch and knowing how to get out of situations. But more than any of that, I mean, I learned about failure. I learned how to cope with it because it's not a matter of if you're going to fail, it's just a matter of when. Um, I can remember the first year where I genuinely felt failure. I mean, I had times in early in my career where I was like, maybe I'm not this great or something like that. And then there was a point where it was the complete opposite, where I thought I was the best pitcher ever.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, at the drop of a hat, everything changes.
Mhm.
And that's whenever I really had to, dig deep and kind of figure out who I was. Um, I think what a lot of people in my position or was my position. Um, I think what a lot of people would probably tell you is the the friendships and the relationships. Don't get me wrong, I miss so badly competing. I miss being on the field. But I think most of the time what a player misses after they leave the game is the camaraderie, the the friendships. I mean, you spend almost every single day with these guys from, you know, January, February, the middle of February, into February, all the way until September. I mean, so I mean, you spend a lot of your life with these guys, and then all of a sudden when you don't anymore, it's a very different feeling. I mean, you still get your off seasons, but I mean that's just for a few months, and then you're right back at it. So I guess the feeling of I'm not going back is probably the hardest thing for me. Um, I didn't. It was never a matter of I thought I was going to play forever, but I thought I would have been able to walk out on my own terms. I didn't think that you never think an injury is what's going to
Yeah.
take take away your career. So for it to end the way that it did, I am upset and sad that it's over, but more than anything, I'm just very thankful and um, I feel very blessed that it ever happened to begin with.
Yeah. So, speaking of, what did you take out of being part of spring trainings in your career? Because that must have been special because learning from the big league players also during spring training. So, what did you get out of the spring training, and then also the coaches and managers of the big league teams?
Yeah, it was cool. I mean, going to big league spring training is always awesome. You get to hang around like the guys, like you see Aaron Judge in the locker room, you see Justin Verlander, you see all the Randy Rosarena, all these teams that I was able to play for. You see all these guys in this locker room. You see that they're no different. I mean, they're still a human being at the end of the day. I mean, they do things a little bit differently, and you kind of see the dedication and what it takes to get to that level. But I mean, it's cool. I mean, you grow up watching these guys, and then all of a sudden you're sitting across the locker from one of them, and they come up and they say, "Hey, how are you? You know, how's it going today?" And it's just it's a little surreal to kind of figure out what exactly to say back. But I mean, they're just normal guys, just like just like me and you. They're no different. They're just really good at playing baseball.
Yeah, so we have another fan question here. One of our fans wants to know who was the funniest teammate that you played with in your career?
The funniest teammate I've ever played with.
Yeah.
Man, that's tough. I mean, I played with a lot of guys. Um, okay, so there was a guy who was with the Yankees.
Uh-huh.
Austin was a very funny teammate, but I don't know if I've ever laughed more in my entire life than with Steven Jennings. He was a bullpen pitcher in the Yankees organization. He signed with the Rangers last year. I think he was in maybe Double A and Triple A with the Rangers, but he he was the funniest teammate I think I've ever had. I mean, I just off the top of my head, I could be missing somebody, but he kept me laughing. I think just about harder than anybody I've ever met.
Wow. Hmm. Yeah, so fortunately, an injury took off. I mean, ended your career early. And talk about how tough was that when you heard the news, and how did you get that injury? And obviously, it was an arm injury, which is always tough for a pitcher. But talk about the process of it. Tell our fans and hard was it that you had to retire from it too.
Yeah, so it started off this year. I was with the Rays. I got traded over to Philly the day before camp broke. Got sent to AAA. I was in Lehigh Valley. Started the season there. Um, I had a little bit of an elbow flare up, like maybe 3 or 4 weeks into the season. Wasn't anything major. I was able to come back from it, build back up, and then I had another flare up. It was just like I don't even remember what it was. It wasn't anything too bad, but it sidelined me for about a week and a half, and then came back, pitched for a little while, and then we were in Syracuse. I was playing catch, made one throw. I felt a pop in my elbow, and I couldn't straighten my arm. I thought I tore my UCL. I go into the training room. They're trying to straighten my arm. They can't straighten it. Uh, we had 2 days left in Syracuse. I couldn't get an MRI there because it was the weekend. There was like something going on. And they were like, we can't schedule one. So I pretty much just had to wait until we got back to Lehigh. Then I went out to Philly, met with the doctor there. They told me that I had pulled the nerve off of my bone. So my ulnar nerve, I pulled it out of the groove. And I was like, okay, so what does that mean? And they're like, well, it's kind of like when you sprain an ankle, it'll correct itself, but it's going to be very susceptible to doing it again. And so started to rehab it, got to a point where I started to move it again, and then it happened again. And that was kind of the nail in the coffin for me. I knew it wasn't something that I could just keep rehabbing, keep going back and forth with. And so uh, Philly had called me in and they were like, hey, we're really sorry about what happened, but we're just gonna have to let you go. And I told them I understand. I mean, they can't pay a guy uh, who's just gonna sit on the shelf all year. So there was no there was no animosity or hard feelings or anything like that. I mean, at the end, it's a business, and you know they couldn't they couldn't reap the rewards from me, so I shouldn't be able to reap them from them.
Did you ever think maybe you could have returned from the injury, or or was it like the final decision or choice?
This was a this was a very emotional season for me. Having organization flip right there at the last second. Um, you know, I battled with I battled with command. I battled with things that I hadn't really struggled with in a while. Because I was pitching hurt and I didn't realize it. And so while I was pitching hurt, I was overcompensating and changing delivery and just trying to throw a baseball without it hurting. And so it was a very, very frustrating time. And then that was the one place where I never wanted to be is I never wanted to be injured. And I was injured more this last season than my entire career pretty much. And so um yeah, when that happened, I pretty much knew. I mean, I had some teams reach out and a lot of indie ball teams reached out to me and my agent had told me like, hey, if you want to keep doing this, like, well, we can find you a job. And I told him I appreciate it, but I'm not getting any younger. I'll be 30 at the end of this month, so I figured it was the responsible thing to do to kind of start sorting my adult life out. As bad as I hated to walk away, but I just felt like it was the responsible thing to do.
Yeah, so if you get the opportunity of being like a coach or something, a pitching coach or bench coach, or whatever, would you consider it?
I think I would. I would love to. I would love to still be involved with the game. I mean, I baseball is such an important part of my life. It's done everything for me.
Yeah.
Um, all of my all of my relationships and friendships. I mean, they've all kind of stemmed from that. I mean, everything. I owe a lot to the game. So I think that regardless if it's me coaching my son's team one day in Little League, or if maybe I'm fortunate enough to be with an organization or something like that. I mean, who knows? I can't tell you that I'm 100% gonna say yes, but I don't see a world where I could probably say no.
Hmm. All right. We'll take two more fan questions. One of our other fans wants to know, name three people that you would have lunch with.
Any or baseball players?
Any.
Any three people I would have lunch with. Um, I think dead or alive or just alive.
Both.
Okay, we'll do dead and alive. All right, so I think I would probably have to say Babe Ruth, just because, you know, I don't feel like a lot of people would be able to do that, and I feel like he could probably have a cigar after lunch for us. Ready? I would have to say, mm, I would probably say I'd have to bring my dad, just because my dad was always, he was always just such a huge part of my baseball career, and he'd probably kick the crap out of me if I was able to go to lunch with Babe Ruth and one other person, and I didn't bring him as my plus one. Um, maybe my dad, Babe Ruth, and Michael Jordan.
Hmm. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. You can't forget about you can say so. Most of the people say Michael Jordan. So
Yeah, I mean, who wouldn't want to go to? And then we wouldn't have to worry about him feeling weird if Babe Ruth broke out a cigar, because Michael's probably already smoking one.
yeah. You want to hear my three?
Yeah, let me hear your three.
All right. My first, I'll go with Kobe Bryant.
Yeah,
Because
that's a good one.
yeah, he was one of my favorite players growing up, and I live by the Mamba mentality. Like the way he lived. I mean, he went about his life. That's how I go about my life, and would say him. And another one is Mike Tyson, uh, because I mean, he's obviously legendary, and
Yeah, he's a beast.
what a great career. And obviously, he has a fight coming up soon with Jake Paul. But I want to learn. I would love to learn My goal is I haven't got a chance to meet him yet or interview him yet, so that's one of the goals, trying to interview him. But I want to learn more about how he does it and how he's like brought up in life and how he does it though. Basically, I want to learn more of that. And then another person would be I would say I'm going to say LeBron James because obviously greatest player in the NBA too. Michael Jordan, obviously a great player, but I want to learn more from LeBron James. So those three.
I mean, those are three heavy hitters right there.
Yeah.
That's gonna be a heck of a lunch.
Yeah. In a fancy restaurant.
Yeah, no kidding.
All right, we'll take one more fan question here. One of our fans wants to know, what was it like for you just to be part of the game that you loved and in the game that you started with in your career? Just they want to know like what was it like being part of the game of baseball and obviously getting a chance to play.
It was everything you could ever imagine and more. I mean, as a kid, you just dream of, you say, "Oh, I want to play in the Major League Baseball," or I want to be an NFL football player, or I want to play in the NBA." And to be able to have that opportunity was just incredible. I mean, it really, really was. It wasn't. It's hard to put it into words because it was so amazing. I mean, like I'll keep going back to it, but it's the relationships and it's the friendships that you build through the game that make it so special. I mean, don't get me wrong, competing and getting out there and showing your stuff is always incredible, but it was amazing. I mean, I don't really know another way to put it, but it was. I'll always be very thankful for being able to do what I did for so long.
And before we let you go, talk about what do you do now? Tell our fans what you do now outside of baseball.
So now I am selling real estate down in South Mississippi. So if anybody ever wants to come down there and buy a huge house, look me up. I'll sell you a house. Or if you want to sell your house, look me up.
Or if you want to go on a college tour to Mississippi State, you can do that too.
Yeah, yeah, hit me up.
But so speaking of, I want to get your thoughts on the real estate business because there's a big trend now with all the athletes getting into real estate. Even athletes that are still playing, they get into real estate or when they're finished playing. So what is it? What do you see as a trend where players get into real estate after playing or either while playing?
I think a lot of it has to do with because I've seen, and it's not just real estate. I mean, I know a lot of guys who I've played with and who have played against me. I know that they've kind of gotten into that sales role, whether it's selling insurance. I know a few guys who are kind of on the lender side. I think more than anything, I think it's just being a people person, being able to talk to people. And one of the things that you have to be able to do when you play is you have to be able to talk to people. And so I think it's just an easier transition kind of going from that. I'm not saying that they're related in any way because they are definitely not. I mean, my day is so far different than what it used to be. But the way that you communicate and you talk with people, that all goes hand in hand.
Yeah.
So I think that's a pretty big reason as to why a lot of ex players get into those kind of jobs and roles.
Oh. Yeah, so there you have it. Zac Houston, former Yankees farmhand pitcher, went to Mississippi State. Zac, thank you for joining the show, and thank you for the fans for tuning in and asking great questions to Zac. And Zac, would you like to say anything to anyone or give people or give shout outs to people?
I'm not going to shout anybody out, but I will say if you are young and you are watching this and you're listening or whatever, um, and you do get the opportunity, soak it in, man. Don't try and rush through it. If you're playing baseball right now, or if you're gonna play, just soak it in and enjoy it because it's not gonna last forever. you will eventually come to a point in your life where you stop playing, and hopefully that's a very, very long time in the future for you. But if you do get the opportunity to play, I would say play and enjoy it and love it, and play as long as you can.
And where can our fans find you on social media?
My Instagram, it's Zac Houston underscore 14, I think, maybe 41. And then Twitter is, I think, the same thing, or X now.
X.
Same thing. And then Facebook is just Zac Houston, ZACHOUSTON. I think my profile picture is me in a Mississippi State uniform sitting on a bench.
Yeah, so all right, let me get your thoughts on who's your favorite NFL team real quick.
Unfortunately, my favorite NFL team is the New Orleans Saints.
Oh, wow.
We just fired our
And it's out, yeah.
yeah, Dennis Allen just got the boot. So this season is pretty much on the rocks, but we're gonna come back next year. We'll be all right.
Wonder who the everybody wants Bill Belichick there. I don't know. Let's see.
Who knows, man? Nobody's turning this season around.
And
They could
one
get Nick Saban over there. I don't think that's gonna help, but who knows?
and one all right, if you had to describe Shohei Ohtani, what word would it be?
And one word,
It could be two words.
um, create a player.
Hmm.
Does that count as two words? That counts as two words. Create a player. He's not real. No,
He's
he's
on.
just he's not real. He's extraterrestrial.
Oh
That's a
my.
good one.
Yeah, so thank you, Zach. Thank you for joining. This was awesome, and thank you for sharing your story on the show. And I know it's hard not playing baseball, but when met you on in person, and that's great. And I knew that you were a great guy, great person, and obviously, I hope it turns out well, and hopefully you get the opportunity to be a coach in baseball if you get the opportunity. But keep up the great work, man, and thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
No problem.